This report is the third and final entry regarding the investigations of the Ordo Theoreticus into the fate of the Forge World Hyacinthum Fenestra. May the blessings of the Emperor and the Omniscire be upon us all. The final push. The battle to retake the cruiser was costly, seeing the attacking Imperials push hard through the gathering forces of their enemies. The twisting mountain passes brought ambush after ambush, heralded by hidden explosives and deadly rockfalls, whilst the wide desert plains left them exposed to the punishing fire of the knights and their stolen warlord Titan. All the while they were harried by squadrons of cultists in looted vehicles, and, when the cultists abated, the Tyranids appeared, swarming the column of embattled warriors even as they began to move into the wreck of their cruiser. Although the debris in near orbit and the impenetrable smog of the atmosphere prevented the Red Castellans from calling down fire support from their ships, every mile of ground was paid for dearly. After nearly 2 full days of bitter fighting, the battle at last found pause. The Genestealer cultists had taken heavy casualties, their magi had been killed, and their knights defeated, whilst most of the cultists themselves were forced back beyond the shadows of the cruiser. The Tyranids were culled en masse, their largest bioorganisms falling to the sweeping fire of the small Titan maniple that accompanied the Imperials, whilst their smaller swarms were scythed down by the punishing bolter fusillades of the Sisters. The looted warlord Titan had at last been disabled, but this had come at the cost of the Imperials' own warlord and almost all of their other Titans. The Explorators and Skitarii suffered heavily, but came through the conflict loosely in fighting form. Many Sisters died in the attack, including Canoness Iliana the 52nd, and most who remained were wounded. Although the securing of their ship's aft holds had replenished their ammunition supplies and a handful of survivors from the vessel had bolstered their ranks, these battle sisters were fighting on faith alone. The remaining Imperial forces gathered themselves around a defensive anchor point along the ship's hull. Here they prepared to endure another assault as the Tyranid swarms cut off their path of retreat, ready to make their last stand. Then, the Cicatrix Maledictum tore the sky in two. A world remade. As it was for the entire galaxy, the opening of the Great Rift threw everything upon Hyacinthum Fenestra into chaos. The sudden cacophony of psychic noise was too much for the Tyranids, breaking their connection to the hive mind, whilst their bioships in orbit were scattered by the deluge of warp energy. Directionless, the individual organisms began to tear into everything around them, including their cultist allies and each other. For the cultists, this seems to have been the final straw. As the rampant warp energy severed their own psychic cohesion, the survivors broke into roaming bands and fled the battlefield. Their largest gathering, apparently led by a knight now bereft of her suit, carried out a vicious coup against the remnants of their former leadership, plundering their resources and fleeing into the mountains. Here the mix of pirates, cultists, and mutants would eke out an existence, raiding the manufactoria and hablocks of the world for years to come. Long ago, these embittered people had abandoned the worship of the uncaring Emperor and that of the Omniscire, instead heeding the promises of the Great Devourer. Now, having seen even their Xenos saviors tear each other to shreds, they renounced worship entirely and instead vowed to live only for themselves. Whilst the opening of the Great Rift may have nominally saved their world, the remaining forces of the Mechanicus were much changed by the conflict. The loss of the Noosphere and their highest-ranking members had caused a crisis of faith. Hyacinthum Fenestra had been considered an orthodox world even by the already inflexible standards of the Adeptus Mechanicus, one that was utterly hostile to any change in its rigid hierarchy. To have that system annihilated in a single blow, losing millennia of technical and ecumenical knowledge along with it, was an incomprehensible shock. The survivors were forced to change. The painful exorcism of the Azure Djinn made them reflect on their own faith, reassess their values, and build anew their understanding of the Omniscire. Through the struggle, the path of the penitent, these children of Mars slowly transformed into a society capable of surviving the calamities that the future would hold. This new Mechanicus persists to this day, a mix of sages, machine speakers, and holy warriors, striding tall upon the walls of their last manufactoria and riding out into the wilds of the world beyond. Here they stand, ready to resist the dangers of this new age with the psalms of the Omnissiah upon their lips. For the sisters of Our Lady of Perpetual Ammunition, survival had come at a high price. Their casualties had been severe, cutting the very heart from their forces. Canoness Ileana the 52nd had perished, leaving the survivors to organize under those few veterans who remained. With their cruiser firmly grounded and the near space around the planet racked by powerful warp storms, their mission to relieve their fellow sisters in the depths of the Brotherhood of Rust's fortress worlds was now impossible. Their battle sisters were cut off from the Emperor's light, lost first to the shadow in the warpcast by the Tyranids, and then to the deafening wail of the Great Rift. Yet, their faith had stood resilient in the crucible of war, and it came through these harrowing days all the stronger. Their belief in the power of humanity was born anew, both from the blood of the foe and through the blessings of the helpless. In the long months before this final confrontation, the Battle Sisters had struck out to save scattered groups of refugees as often as to cripple their enemy. It was this faith, made from flesh and blood, that would survive best in the lightless times they were now facing. With their determination reaffirmed, the Sisters of Our Lady of Perpetual Ammunition, perhaps the last of their sisterhood in all the galaxy, took the sorrow of their losses in stride and prepared to do what their order does best: endure. An island adrift. Today, Hyacinthum Fenestra is a world lost beyond the grasp of mankind. Just as it was once the industrial heart of an underdeveloped subsector, it is now an island of sanity amidst the sea of madness. Surrounded by powerful warp storms, the system is a challenge to even enter. The closer one comes to the Forge world, the more profound the dangers. The remnants of planets cracked by warp energies clog the outer system, whilst the inner system is infested with half-mad Tyranid bioships and the few surviving vessels of the Red Castellans clinging to what little resources they can pull from derelicts and tear from each other. The world itself is encased in the spinning debris of what had been its orbital ring, barring entry to all but the most daring of explorers. If one is bold enough to venture down to the surface, they will find a once mighty place of industry now twisted by war and ruin. Here the wild wasteland is infested with feral Tyranid monstrosities and desperate bands of marauders lurking amidst ruined cities and rustling monuments to the machine god. On the far side of the world, where a vast hydroponics laboratoria once stood, the Earth itself has become a sickening landscape of stagnant biopools dotted amongst forests of tall, chitinous towers. These constructs spit out an intermittent stream of Tyranid organisms, animalistic monstrosities that tear across the world in a blind hunger. Whilst for many years these creatures have been content to cannibalize each other, some have begun to show a level of rudimentary coordination, forming into cohesive packs that grow larger with every passing season. From the twisted mountain ranges that sit just below the world's northern polar ice cap, bands of raiders strike out to pillage fledgling settlements and the ruins of great forges. They are a patchwork collection of mutants, strain brethren, former pirates, and abhuman outcasts, uniform only in their love for violence. Led by the enigmatic queen of the iconoclast, these raiders have built a mighty stronghold somewhere within the mountains, a place nigh on untouchable to any force remaining on the world. From here, they tear across the wastelands in vast convoys, devastating those unfortunate enough to end up in their path. Despite their savagery, the undeniable strength of the iconoclast has attracted a great host of people to their cause, swelling their ranks further every year. Many who do not join outright instead pay tribute, supplying the marauders with a consistent source of food and fuel and creating a fractured territory bound by fear, forced to do the will of their queen. Against these brutish forces stand the last remnants of the former rulers of Hyacinthum Fenestra. From behind the ruined walls of Ble Parathero, the warriors of the Emperor and the Omnissiah ride forth. The servants of the Mechanicus are much changed since the days of the Forge World's height. Gone are the synchronized ranks of red-robed Skitari and cloaked Magi, replaced with companies of rangers sporting heavily patched weapons and recycled bionics. Yet, within these trails of vagabonds, there are bands of faith stronger than their predecessors ever knew. Each one is as capable a soldier as they are a tech priest or lex mechanic, able to operate for long months in the wilderness without support or resupply. In the ruins of the Manufactoria and Forge cities, they speak to the broken remnants of machines, unlocking the secret passageways of their world to reveal the treasures buried deep within. With their devotion to the Omnissiah burning bright, they cleanse the corruption of the Azure Jinn, bringing healing to the machines of the Forge world wherever they tread. Marching at their side are the Sisters of Our Lady of Perpetual Ammunition, their faith and firepower as evident as ever. The long decades have been merciless, punctuated by years of conflict and famine, yet the Sisters have slowly built up their strength to once again number in the hundreds. Still, they have not yet reached the vast ranks that were stationed on the world when this calamity began. These new warriors, Hyacinthum natives all, show a zeal that is as strong for their adopted faith as it ever was for the Omnissiah. This has caused a shift in the very nature of the Order itself, now carrying a chimeric mix of beliefs that have come from the blending of the cult of Saint Iliana with the cult Mechanicus. The crucible of Hyacinthum Fenestra has given the Order a respect for human life that it never knew in its previous incarnation. Whether at the gates of the world's last city, within the great fortress that their wrecked cruiser has become, or on missions across the wide desolation of its surface, these battle sisters are known for their bold actions in the preservation of human life. In a world twisted by war, overrun by monsters, and plagued by the evils of those that remain, this heroism is a shining beacon against the long night. Hyacinthum Fenestra may have long since fallen from the Emperor's light, but to those who are sworn to defend it, this is no reason to abandon their post. Upon this blighted world, cast adrift far beyond the reach of the Imperium, the spark of humanity still burns, life still flourishes, and the will to survive remains strong.